Hi, friends and family. This is Allyson Schramm. I am the medium.
And the mortician.
I've been telling you guys for a while now that we are a couple, but this is my first time for Mr. Charlie to come into YouTube and to sit and talk to me because I'm always talking about my life or what's happening or who I read for because I am a professional psychic medium. I am actually what is called a physical phenomena medium. I am a trance medium. I ask that you don't talk during readings with me because it stops the flow, the energy, the connection that I have to the other side. I will give you an opportunity during a reading for you to ask questions, but I am a trance medium, and also I am psychic, which everyone who is a medium is psychic, but everyone who is psychic is not necessarily a medium. So I was single for a very long time. I decided that I wanted to go to a funeral home and apply for a job. And I wanted to be near people who have passed because I wanted to see how quickly I could hear from the deceased.
It wasn't me.
You weren't the deceased?
No,
No.
wasn't the deceased.
He was in the morgue.
Sometimes I feel like it, but not, yeah.
Not yet. So he was the mortician. I was hired. I was in sales. It is a crematorium, cemetery, funeral home that is all connected, and I was hired on the sales team there. And that's how we met. I actually asked one day if I could meet the mortician. You want to take it from there?
You go ahead and finish what
Okay.
your cousin was there and everything.
Okay, so my cousin had come to visit. She was actually helping my uncle set up his funeral plans, and so we were all there, and I told her, I said, I have not been in the prep room, but while you're here, I'm thinking that I would like to take a tour of the prep room. Would you go with me? And she said, oh, you're always getting me in trouble. Every time I get with you, I do something I get in trouble for. And I said, just come on, we're just gonna walk through the morgue. I mean, how could that get us in trouble? So they called and asked for the mortician to come, and he came and to where we were, and he took a look at us, and he said, well, hold on a minute. We told him we wanted to go through the prep room, and I introduced myself, told him I was new on staff. So he took us into the prep room, and that is my first time to actually step up to a body as a medium, wondering if I would be able to hear from her. Now, the really good news is about while I was there, my first cousin was keeping him entertained completely. Do you remember some of the things Liam was doing and talking about?
I don't know. She told me one time, she said, don't drop any money or quarter on the floor because I'll never pick it up. I ain't touching nothing. And it really was, we weren't in a prep room, we were a room next to the prep room that we call a dressing room, where we go ahead and dress the body, and I do all the cosmetics there and everything. And Leanne was sprayed eagle against the wall. I mean, she was just flat against the wall, like didn't want to touch nothing.
She was scared.
She was scared. Yeah.
There was a body laying on the table.
Yeah. So I had this lady that I picked up the night before, and I embalmed her that night when I picked her up. But then in the morning I was doing her hair, and I just washed her hair, and I was drying it and scrunching it with my hands and everything, and I was getting ready to roll it. And so that's when she came in, and Allison asked me, do you know this lady? And
I said, do you know her name?
Do you know her name? And I kind of thought for a minute. I said, well, I should know her name because I picked her up last night and what have you. And then you said, does it start with a B? And I kind of hesitated again, because it did, and wondering who is this lady and how did she know this lady's name started with a B? I said, yes, it did start with a B. And then you asked me, was it Bernice? And I said, no, it was, what did I say?
Bernie.
It was Bernie. Wasn't Bernice, it was Bernie, which is, I guess, short for Bernice. And
Now, let me tell you something. So I'm hearing from the deceased, but what I did not know, standing on the other side of the prep table, the man in the scrubs and all the safety, not the scrubs, but the jackets and whatever embalmers wear, was a true Louisiana Cajun smartass, okay? I did not know that. All I knew is that he was the embalmer, and I'm just pure in heart, simple. I just want to see if I can hear from the deceased. I was on staff at that point, and he's standing there with a toothpick. He had just come from lunch in the corner of his mouth, and I have my first deceased woman laid out in front of me. He did pull a sheet over her.
Yeah, and then I think you asked me, do you know any of the relatives? Do you know anybody? I said, no, I do not know. I wasn't making arrangements. I was just embalming the body. Somebody else was making arrangements. So no, I did not know any relatives who she had.
And I said, well,
is
it said she's talking about.
Yeah, she's talking about John. And I said, is there a John? Do you know a John? I said, nope, there wasn't any information at where I picked her up. I think I got her at nursing home. And there wasn't any information there that had to do with a relative named John. So I said, okay, so that was it. So the next day, I had her dressed and in the casket, and she had fallen and taken a bump on her head.
And let me tell you about that.
I fixed it so you could not see it.
He did, but let me just say this. My first time, right? And she had taken a fall in the nursing home. However, I did not know she had been in a nursing home, and all I knew is she had a great big knot right here on her head with a perfectly round looking blueberry sitting on top. Apparently she had I don't know if she had she must not have had any cosmetics on at that point.
She didn't have cosmetics.
Her hair was wet. Now let me I go back and I go over this because this is the point that I fell in love with the mortician. I did not even know his name. But what happened was he was looking into her face and he was scrunching her hair. Her hair was wet and it was naturally curly, probably very similar to what mine looks like right now.
It was short. She had short hair, gray hair, but it was naturally curly.
And he was scrunching it, and there was so much compassion and now this is what I did not know. A mortician is truly an artist, okay? A good mortician is an artist. They tell me that Charlie is a dinosaur. He's been doing this for 50 years now. But Charlie will stare into someone's face or look into the deceased and imagine at their best what it is, how they look. And I have found him staring into me. When I first started dating him, he scared me because he would just stare at me and I'd say, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm studying your features." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "I just like to, it's part of my craft. It's part of what I do."
It's a habit. It's a habit that even when we go out to eat now, I look at people and I can tell just by looking at them what their features are going to look like, how they're supposed to look. It's a natural thing.
I thought Mrs., and I won't say her last name, but I thought Bernice had taken a shot. It looked like a bullet hole to me. Is exactly what it looked like. I thought she had taken a bullet to the head. promise you. Maybe that was just in the whole, the linear thinking, not psychically. There was a
Yeah.
big difference between hearing from spirit and letting your head take over.
And then being a little bit nervous on top of all.
And I had my cousin standing there holding up the whole building with
Not-
spread eagle against the wall.
Not saying a word, nothing.
So I said, she's talking about her grandson, John.
Her grandson, John.
She told me it was her grandson. She said she was talking about her grandson, John, and he said, don't know her, don't know the family, don't know anything about her.
Didn't make
And
arrangements.
when he's
da, da, da.
talking to you now, he's being nice to you. He's delivering this story as though he was just a perfect gentleman and very charming. The total opposite. When I walked away from this man, I thought, what an ass. I mean, he's such an ass.
Of course, I do not know that lady's name. I did not make arrangements with her. I just passed her up at the nurse home. I picked her up and I brought her here. Now I'm doing everything. That's it. That beats me.
So we walk away, we walk out, and that was, we got Leanne out of the building, and
The next day was the visitation, and the family had already decided when they made arrangements that they were going to close. It was going to be a closed casket.
now let me just say this, as an advocate for the deceased, and which I don't know that anyone has ever described someone who works in sales as an advocate for the deceased, but somehow in my head I have, and I do this all the time as a physical phenomenon, psychic medium. It's like justice. Like I have this thing about me where I will represent someone to their relatives, or I speak on their behalf. And so I said to the family that night, please open the casket. She is truly beautiful.
And the next day when the family came in, they looked at her, and yes, they did leave the casket open.
Now, this is where cosmetics come in, and there's so many things that he and I can talk about. And fortunately, here on YouTube, as you're filming, they have a counter, and it tells you how many minutes. And I'm going to try to keep these to like 30 minutes, but there's so many different aspects and different places we can go with this. But first of all, I want to tell you that that Cosmetics Lime Life by Alcone is my business. limelifebyalcone.com/Allyson Schramm. Organic botanical skincare, because parabens are the chemicals that are found in breast cancer tissue. This line is only 5 years old. It is a direct selling company, but the only direct selling company allowed in the international makeup shows, because they are part of Alcone, and Alcone has been around since the late 1950s, 1940s, the early 1950s, I mean. So I'm in cosmetics, and Charlie, having been an embalmer, being an artist, and us talking about his craft and him staring into people's faces, it is because he's a professional makeup artist. Now, I have said to him, could you do my makeup?
And I said, yeah, I can do your makeup, but you gotta not breathe.
You have to lay down first.
You have to lay down first. You gotta be quiet and try not to breathe.
And so obviously everyone who wants to have their makeup done by Charlie, you know.
I had done her, after a while she was dyeing her hair, what have you. So I would go ahead and...
Who, me? Oh,
you,
yes.
Yeah, I was dyeing your hair. And she bought the dye and everything, and I was dyeing her hair when we lived in Orneville. And naturally I was treating her hair like I would somebody that was laying on a prep table that was dead. And she told me, she said, be a little gentle. I was too rough with her. And it was just a natural thing that I was doing somebody's hair that was laying on a prep table that was
Now,
dead.
let me tell you what, I was sitting there with a plastic thing around me, and Charlie was dyeing my hair, and what I was experiencing was him pushing my head like this, and he wasn't talking to me. And I thought, what the heck? And I said to him, I can hear you. Talk to me. I can hear you. If you want me to turn my head this way or turn my head, let me know. I'll be happy to move my head. But because he had only worked with the deceased, he was not accustomed to people cooperating with him and, move that foot here and lift that arm
Yeah.
and turn that cheek this way. So that was one of the things he had to learn about doing cosmetics for the living, in addition to the fact that everyone's not going to lay down for him
Yeah.
to do their makeup. But getting back to meeting.
If I would have asked someone to turn their head and she moved her head, I would been out the back door real quick.
So basically, we are talking about cosmetics, and we're talking about.
Let me say, the cosmetics that we use, that I use, is not off of the counter. It's not that you can buy at the Walgreens or any cosmetics.
He's talking about for the deceased.
For the deceased. I use cosmetics that is made for the deceased. It's made by Dodge Chemical Company. I use Dodge Chemicals and their brand of cosmetics. And today I still have all my cosmetics that I used and all my instruments, but it's an oil-based cosmetic. And when you embalm somebody, you take all the oil out of the body. So, and then we put a massage cream on to kind of keep the body moist and keep it oily. Then I take that off. Then I use my Dodge cosmetics, and I mix all my colors I only use 5 colors, and I can mix anything you want. Cover any bruise, anything with that. That's just. I was self-taught. I guess I taught myself how to do all of that, and that's what I did all my life.
So, with the deceased, what I just heard him say, same with the living, you have to make sure that the makeup on your face is not going to move, because this body vessel that our soul is traveling in, it's like a used car, okay, when we're through with it or when we're done with it. It's just a vehicle, but it has water that leaks. It has oils that come through it, whether the heart is beating or whether the heart is not beating, right? That's what I just heard him say. I just heard him say that as human beings, part of the whole flesh has oil in it, and that with the exchange, when you pull, and you can talk about at some point the whole embalming process, but when you're pulling the body fluid out of the body and you're replacing it with chemicals, you still have to use a primer. You have to, and that's what he was talking about with a paste. You have to use a primer so that your makeup will not move. You cannot expect to just put on your cosmetics and it look like this 10 hours from now, unless you use a good primer and a good setting spray.
Yeah. Well, the primer that we use, it's just a cream. It's a cream that by Dodge that we use, and it keeps the skin moist, keeps the skin real moist. And I generally do not like to do cosmetics right after I finished embalming the body. I just something I don't like to do. I'd rather wait 4 or 5 hours, or do it the next. If I embalm a body that night, I like to do it the next day. But these cosmetics are designed to stay like you put them on a body. I have seen disinterment of somebody that I embalmed.
Let's talk about disinterment. What is the definition of that?
Disinterment is when you have to dig up, exhume a body.
So the body has already been buried.
Yeah, the body been buried, unless for reasons for any tests, so they have to do another autopsy or something on it, for not military, but sheriff's department or the coroner has to do something anyway. So this body was interred, and it was moved, had to be moved to another gravesite, and it was a Batesville casket, and we decided we were going to open it up and look at the body. And the cosmetics, you could have opened that casket and showed it show dead body that the next day. Just had to fix
How long had
the
the body been in the ground?
it was in the ground 3 years.
Shut up.
3 years. Naturally, the everything was kind of shriveled and shrunk a little bit, but as far as cosmetics and everything, it was you could have shown that
So
body.
there
But
was, I'm asking because I'm interested. So there was some decay, obviously.
yeah,
Or
there
you
was
said-
some decay.
Okay, because
Yeah.
when they replace the fluid in the body,
Mm-hmm.
it is, Charlie calls it hitting it hard. I hit him really hard. And what that means to me in his talk means I shot him up, I pumped him full really hard.
High
with-
density, uh, a high index of formaldehyde, a fluid that had a high index, and just you can use a lower index, a high index, and it's just you use that and it gets the body real firm. If I had any doubt that there might be a problem with this person the next day or something, that's what I would do. I would shoot it real hard. But
Or if
uh,
someone said, my mother's deceased, but it's going to take my family a couple of weeks to all gather.
yeah, then I would shoot the body almost just straight fluid, no water or nothing, just straight embalming fluid, and that
So-
body would be preserved. Now,
I
I
just
could
want to say real quickly, because what you're saying is really interesting, but we're talking about the body that was exhumed that had been in the grave for
Yeah.
3 years. Okay, and you had used the makeup, the primer, and you had hit the body hard.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? So this body was preserved so well that when they brought the body up and to re-examine or for whatever reason,
it was just a disinterment. We were just burying
Oh.
it from another location.
oh, okay. So when they did that and they took a look at the body, it was shocking, is what I'm hearing him say. They weren't taking the body out of the
No,
casket.
we
They were
just-
just moving the entire unit with the
Yeah.
body in it. But that's just what I'm gonna do, and I know my Lime Life fellow Lime Lifers are going to say, did she really go there? Did she really make some sort of, could you hold this for me? Make some sort of segue from the deceased, the makeup staying on and the body being preserved, to Lime Life Cosmetics by Alcone? And the answer is yes, I really did go there and I really did do it. And let me tell you why. This sunscreen is a primer. It's 30 SPF. It is a moisturizer, a primer, and a sunscreen. It is made with zinc and vitamin C. There are no chemicals in this sunscreen. LimeLifeByAlcone.com/Allyson Schramm. This is the best primer if you're going to put your makeup on and you're going to go out in excessive heat, or you're going to be sweating, or you're going to be in the sun, or you don't want your makeup to move. This is the best primer ever. So I just wanted to say, when he was talking about the oils in the deceased, we are living, functioning human beings with a heart that's shooting fluid through all of these miles of intestines, and we have the sweat glands and the oil. Now, if you don't want to use an SPF or a cream, if you want to just shoot your face with a with a primer for your foundation, this is the exact same product as Skin Denavia makes, SKIN Denavia. It is a wonderful product, first base makeup primer. So we're still preparing the face to go on about our day, just as he prepares the face to apply the makeup. So do we, and so should you, as the living. Shoot your face with some makeup primer, or use this sunscreen makeup primer in order for your makeup not to move. Okay, so
Okay. I had a situation that this man, older man, he was, I guess, in his 70s or so, he passed away. And back then, you could pick up a body from a hospital or a nursing home or what have you, and you didn't have to have paperwork to do the preparation. We just automatically went ahead and embalmed the body. So I picked this gentleman up at the hospital and brought him back, and I guess he must have weighed about 150 pounds. Wasn't a big man, and I embalmed him and everything. And we knew then that they didn't know where the relatives were. Had no contact with relatives, and but we took charge of the body. So we said we would just keep the body here until they can locate some family members. So that being said, I use Interfine fluid by Dodge Chemical and used just fluid to embalm him. Now, way back then, that was unheard of, using just fluid, but I did that, and he looked real good, but he was solid as a rock. You could have stood him up in a corner, and when I nicknamed him Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry didn't have any clothes or nothing, so I had an old suit that I hadn't worn for a long time, and shirt and tie, and had some old shoes, and we dressed Mr. Henry. And Mr. Henry stayed in the prep room. We had him on a roll around table, and it got to be, we would talk to Mr. Henry every day. Gentleman that worked with us, we always made coffee in the morning, drip coffee in the afternoon. And in the morning, his name was Junior Kinchin. He would make a little cup of coffee. I said, Junior, where you going with that? He said, Mr. Henry liked to have some coffee. So he'd bring that down to the table, just set it on the table. That was coffee for Mr. Henry. And we always had the newspaper every morning. So one morning he took the newspaper. I said, Junior, where you going with that? He said, Mr. Henry wants to read the newspaper. So sure enough, he brought it and laid it on the table, and for Mr. Henry to read the newspaper. So that went on for, I guess, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months or so, and it was quite a while. So finally, they contacted a relative in Michigan, and so we talked to him, and he said, "Well, when we receive the body here, it's just gonna be a closed casket." And I said, "No, sir, no. You don't have this. This can be an open casket. When you receive," I said, "Mr. Henry." We nicknamed him Mr. Henry. When you receive Mr. Henry, that you can open that casket. You might have to just touch up something a little bit. I don't think you will. You can view him. Well, we got to make that decision when we get the body. I said, okay, you make the decision, but I'm telling you, as the embalmer and did the cosmetics, he will be fine. You can open the casket, have a viewing.
And that has to be like insane for another embalmer to hear you say, I know we've had him here for 4 months, but trust me, he's fine.
Yeah, and he was kind of cocky. He said, "Oh no, we just closed the casket."
He probably thought, you Southern Louisiana boys don't know.
Yeah, he didn't know what the hell. You don't know Pacon. So sure enough, we shipped the body to Michigan, and lo and behold, we got a call the next day, and it hurt him to say that I was right, that we opened the casket, we had a viewing, we didn't have to do anything to the body. So that was...
So depending on the preparation is what I'm hearing Charlie say. Normally
Yeah.
Charlie doesn't get through that story without crying. So I was holding back or waiting for the tears because it is possible to care for the deceased not knowing, and the physical body, the vessel that soul was housed in, just honoring that process. And a good mortician takes pride in their work, and what an accomplishment that during that time that you could preserve a body. He was dressed in Charlie's clothes, and they had treated Mr. Henry, coming in the morning, good morning, Mr. Henry.
It was more than just embalming and taking pride in doing the cosmetic and stuff. He became kind of like part of the family at the funeral home, because we talked to him like he was sitting up in a chair. You know, we in the kitchen we talk about, well, we were making jokes about Mr. Henry and what you think he would like and this and that. So it was a personal thing. And when he left, after we shipped him out, the next day we were having coffee, and Junior just knowingly automatically he would make a cup of coffee and make a little cup. And I said, Junior, where you going? He said, Mister. Junior was shipped him out. Oh, I forgot. So
Charlie told me this story, and as a medium, I'm caught off guard at times because I'm not expecting to hear from someone. But when Charlie first told me this story, and we were living in Louisiana, I heard him say, I take my coffee, 2 sugars, black. And I told Charlie that, and Charlie said, what did y'all talk about at the funeral home? How Mr. Charlie took his coffee.
Yeah, how Mr. Charlie took his coffee. And
I mean, Mr. Henry.
Mr. Henry, yeah.
That they would say, Mr. Henry wants creamer in his coffee, or Mr. Henry wants, like, they would argue around among themselves, like, how are you going to serve? Wait, no, he takes his coffee with creamer. He doesn't take it.
And then he just said, oh, he takes it black,
Yes, he told me, like, I had no idea that they had been having those conversations. Like, they would tease each other.
Yeah.
How he takes his coffee, because depending on who takes Mr. Henry's coffee is the one who prepared the coffee for Mr. Henry.
Junior would put a little cream in it, And I said, Junior, how do you know he likes cream? He said, well, I like cream in my coffee. I said, okay. So a couple of days later, he came back and said, no, you were right. The coffee's been sitting there, and he never touched it. I said, I told you he doesn't like cream. He just wants sugar. So he put a little sugar in there, and then
it was just and
went
that's,
on.
for me, that's just evidence of the mediumship of how we can hear from the non-physical. I was not married to Charlie during that time. What year was that? Do you have any idea?
Oh, I don't know. That was in the 80s.
Okay, in the 80s.
No, in the late 70s.
Okay, so in the late 70s, I had just graduated from high school. He's 15 years older than I am. So I was nowhere around, never heard the story before. And when he got through telling it, Mr. Henry said to me, I take my coffee black, 2 sugars. And I said to Charlie, Mr. Henry just said to me, he takes his coffee black, 2 sugars. Charlie said, oh.
That's what we've been doing.
He
I told
said,
you. Yeah, we've been giving him sugar.
He said that the Mr. whatever his name was,
Junior Kinchin.
Junior was wanting to put creamer in it. He's like, no, we don't put creamer in it.
We don't put creamer. But let me go. There's another. I had one more situation when.
Continue, because for me,
I had.
This is all about preserving the body and the cosmetics.
I went to the hospital. The hospital called me, and they said and I knew everybody at the hospital, and all the nurses, people that ran the morgue and everything. They come and said, Charlie, I want you to come. We have this gentleman that wants to talk to you. So I went over there, and the man was having his right leg amputated, right below the knee, right at the knee. And they said he knew that. He said, eventually, when I pass away, he said, I don't want to die tomorrow, but whenever I pass away, is there a possible chance you can preserve this leg that you take from me now, and I'd like to be buried with it? I said, sure, no problem. He said, you can do that? I said, yeah. He said, you can put it on ice? I said, no ice. I'll go ahead and embalm it and put it in formaldehyde powder, and it'll be fine. So sure enough, I took it back to the funeral home, and I injected it with just straight fluid, and it was, I mean, you could use it as a baseball bat. It was that hard. And I put it in a plastic sleeve, a foot sleeve, and put a lot of powder, formaldehyde powder in it, and with a little lime, and sealed it up and put it in the corner and just left it there. And the man lived, I think, 3 years. And when he passed away, we put that leg in his casket.
So, there you have it regarding preserving the physical body. It can be done. And the chemicals that are used today, it's so important that you use safety protective gear, because Charlie has told me they never.
When we started, when I started working at the funeral home, it was Thomas Funeral Home in Hammond, Louisiana, and we didn't know what gloves were. Did not Had no idea what gloves were, and I could eat a hamburger in one hand and embalm the body with the other hand. We do autopsies. We get an autopsy, and I'll be digging in there with my hands and everything, and sewing separating stuff and doing what I have to do. No gloves. Never used gloves. Never thought about using gloves. Then, as the years went on, all of a sudden, everything changed. The rules came down, and you had to have gloves. You had to have eye protection. Some of them had a helmet that they put on with an eye shield. Uh, you had to wear a whole garment, a whole deal, and then you had shoes. You had to put slippers on your shoes, and it was just to me it was overkill. But that's what the um,
OSHA.
OSHA came down with, and and it got to where the funeral homes were really adamant about it because they were afraid that if they did something wrong, they were going to get slapped. Let me tell you something. OSHA has bigger fires to put out than a funeral home not getting caught not wearing gloves. But then again, your state inspector, it all relies on the state inspector. If he's a nice guy, and we had a nice state inspector, and everybody has to turn their eyes away and say, yeah, that's okay. We won't write you up for that, but just remember, this is what you need to do, and you need to conform with the rules. But even today, I think it's a lot of BS as far as because I embalmed bodies for so many years without gloves or anything. We didn't know what AIDS were. Had no idea what AIDS were. And I don't know how many bodies I embalmed that had AIDS. And nowadays, if they have AIDS, oh my goodness, you got to put sleeves on your arms. You can't breathe. You got to do this. You got to do that. So there's a lot of infectious diseases that were back then, especially when right before I started, they would go to the house, and my mentor, the embalmer that taught me how to embalm, he said he used to tell stories about going to a house and embalming bodies at the residence. They take a table and everything, and no machine. It was all pump. It was all pump type deal, and with gravity feed and everything. And so there was nothing about any diseases or AIDS or infectious anything you could get infected with. So times has changed. That's like everything else. You could drive 55 miles an hour. That's all the faster the car would go. Not a car goes 150, 160. So times change, and rules and regulations in the funeral business have changed. And a lot of it's real good. A lot of it's good. And some of it, a lot of funeral directors just frown upon, but they conform with it because that's the law. That's what you have to do.
I am so grateful that OSHA has stepped up. We now know that the cosmetics that women are just walking around wearing every day have chemicals that are used in embalming.
Well, one thing that
Formaldehyde
gives off a strong odor, and we've had some other fluids that it was a paste that we'd use, and it's stronger than anything you ever smelled. And I never wore a mask. I never wore anything. I would just smell it. Other people couldn't even come in the prep room, and I was in there working, and consequently, this has burned all my nasal passages. It just burned all that strong formaldehyde fluid. Just burned it all up. Today, people that use that, they wear a mask, and a shield and everything, and that I can understand because that can be dangerous. But
If what my mission is today, and I'll link this to what he is talking about with the cosmetics used and where he is today with having used the chemicals in the embalming process. But I am here because Lime Life by Alcone has removed the parabens that are found in cosmetics. The United States of America's FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, does not monitor or have the standards that the European countries have with the chemicals that are used in everything that is found on the shelves in the grocery stores. The Food and Drug Administration states that they do not investigate or look into what we're using on our skin and on our babies until they have complaints about it. Now, what I am encouraging you to do, and let me tell you one of the reasons that this hits close to home with me, excuse me, is because Charlie, knowing that Charlie did not use gloves, that he has lost all sense of smell. He is also a veteran. He spent 4 years serving in the Air Force. So he has all of his medical coverage done through the VA. But I am in his life now, in this part of his life, and he has had prostate cancer. He has other problems, other issues, or other health questions. One is a mass on the brain, on the front part of the
pituitary,
and just other things that we can talk about that I believe have been associated with the chemicals that he has been exposed to all of his life, right? As an embalmer mortician. Now, what I am telling you is that today they are finding parabens, which is the name of the group of chemicals that are used in everyday cosmetics, in breast cancer biopsies. If you have breast cancer and you have a sample of that diagnosed or looked at, taken apart, I think in terms of having okay, well, anyway, if they look at that under the microscope, they find parabens in the breast cancer tissue. And the parabens are coming from your skincare. There is an app that you can download called Think Dirty, and that app will allow you, hold on a second. Okay, that app will allow you to scan everything with a barcode on it, and it will tell you on a scale of 1 to 10 how dangerous it is, and it will list the ingredients, the chemicals in that product, everything from shower gel, shampoo, body lotion. Please, even if it's Dove soap, even if it's Dial soap, even no matter what it is, and you think, oh, I've used this forever, I am encouraging you to scan it. It's a free app, and see how it rates. You will be shocked to see that some of the things you use on your skin every day, every morning, every night are high, rate a 10 on the most dangerous. They have discovered that the average woman eats 7 pounds of lipstick in a lifetime, and that the chemicals, the dyes that are used in lip color are found in brain cancer biopsies, so in women. So what I am asking you, I am trying to help you understand that you are not safe just by purchasing anything and everything that's available to you on the shelves, unless they're up to European standards. In Europe and other countries, they do not allow acetone, formaldehyde. The first ingredient, if you go anywhere right now, do it tonight, or unless you have some in your house, go buy a can of dry shampoo. Or you don't have to buy it, just take your phone and go to the store. The first ingredient in dry shampoo is propane. The second ingredient is butane. So does it make sense to you to spray chemicals directly onto your scalp, butane and propane? It doesn't to me. I struggle with a thyroid disease and I lose my hair easily, and I want to hold on to the hair I have. The last thing I want to do is hit my head with propane and butane. So Mr. Charlie is talking about the effects of the chemicals on the deceased. And I am telling you that having learned what he has, the wisdom and the experience that he has, that as human beings, as mothers especially, do not put chemicals on your babies, okay? Lime Life by Alcone is Leaping Bunny certified, not tested on animals, no animal byproducts. It is vegan, completely vegan. The skincare is anti-aging, made from botanicals, plants. So please know that my whole purpose of being here today and being able to have, I am a medium, I just happen to have a mortician with me, and we both have a lot of experience with cosmetics, with skincare on two different avenues parallel to each other. But Charlie can talk more in the future about the cosmetics, the rearranging of the face, or taking the scalp and pulling the skin back, whatever it is that has to be done to prepare your loved ones for viewing in the funeral home. In the meantime, I just want to tell you guys that you can find me on Facebook. I am Allyson Schramm. This is Lime Life by Alcone, the medium and the mortician. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the medium and the mortician. Hit subscribe. It will notify you when we're going to be coming back and telling more stories from Mr. Charlie's experience and me having been married to a mortician living in funeral homes. We love being here.
And we enjoyed explaining everything to you. I hope it's kind of clear. It's been a while since I've done this, but my memory is pretty good with special cases that I've done. And I have probably a lot more stories that I could tell you that you wouldn't want to hear.
I've documented a lot of them.
Yeah, we have a lot of them documented. But I want to say this. Using formaldehyde when we didn't wear gloves years ago, I know that our hands were always rough. Always rough. We had to use a lot of cream on our hands. Today, I will use gloves constantly, only because formaldehyde and everything just makes your hands really makes them rough, and the skin, it eventually peels the skin off just little by little.
And people, formaldehyde is used in skincare and cosmetics today.
Mm-hmm.
Please trust me on that.
So
Google it.
That tells you what it does, what formaldehyde will do to you.
So,
okay.
As Coach O would say,
go Tigers.
Go Tigers. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.